One of our institutional goals at Oakland University is to be a better partner with our surrounding communities. Welcome to campus. We're glad you're here.
And I want to give a shout out to the Pontiac High School kids and the International Tech Academy kids. I know we have 70 students here today.
They carry history on their shoulders. They were there. They were among civil rights marchers who headed east out of Selma onto US Route 80. So they were able to cross the Edmund Pettus Bridge. They were there for all three marches that ultimately resulted in the Voting Rights Act, which was finally signed into law in August of that year. And nearly 6 decades after those marches, the lessons are clear. Any limit on voting rights is an infringement on civil liberties. Signs are now everywhere that the struggle for voting rights, unfortunately, still continue. Many states have since passed some restrictive voting rules. There have been more than 400 bills that have been introduced into state legislatures that have since limited voting rights.
Oakland University, we demand that you count us. We demand that you no longer feel comfortable discounting us. We demand that you allow us the same rights that you allow to every other citizen when it comes to participating in democracy. We demand that you allow us to vote. And what they were saying is, I belong. I belong. I belong. The organization is when you vote, I win. And I got a lot of pushback on that particular phraseology. So many people told me that it's not inclusive. It's selfish. But what I believe is that we need to be comfortable with telling folks that when you don't vote, you impact my family. When you don't vote, you impact my community. When you don't vote, you impact my city and my state. And so in order for me to win, this is personal. Even though it may seem like a selfish type of statement, what it does is it requires a selfless response. See, the world will be what we make it, and whatever it is will be based upon how we decide we're going to participate in the process. We need to vote. In order for those that have gone on before us who did that work, some who lost their lives, we need to go vote. We need to go vote. And with that, I'm going to bring to the stage our 2 Selma foot soldiers. Denise Holt was 14 years old when she made the march, all 3 marches as a matter of fact, and all of the events that surrounded it. But Alice Moore, she is still engaged in the fight.
How's everybody doing today? My name is Carolyn Clifford. I'm an anchor and reporter at Channel 7. I was born and raised in the city of Detroit. It's really important, especially today, for you to know your history. And so we're calling you foot soldiers, huh?
Well, everybody know about Bloody Sunday, but there were so many things that happened to us before Bloody Sunday. And I started out with SNCC when I was 15, and it went on into 16. But during that time, a lot of demonstrations and protests. We were arrested a lot. We were huddled onto buses and locked up by people using cow prod. I don't know how many of you, the young kids probably don't know, but that's what you use on cows when you take them to slaughter to get them to move. Well, that's what they used on us, electrical shock to get you moving. The most traumatic thing that happened during the time before was the time that we were huddled on a bus and taken to a prison camp. And there we stayed 4 days with our parents not knowing where we were. Other days they took us, they let us go at night and we go back home. But this day we didn't go home. They put us on school buses and took us to this prison camp where we stayed for 4 days.
Think about that, especially you high school kids. You know, 14 and 16, think about that. There were no laws to protect these young girls from being treated this way. So why did they do that to you guys?
They did it because we did not obey their rules. Stop marching, go home, go home. They were telling us to go home. Being teenagers, being kids, we were defiant. We were not going to go home. We were out here for a purpose, and we were going to continue to do what we set out to do, and that was to make it possible for our parents and the seniors to get registered to vote. So yeah, they did. They locked us up. They threw us in a room, I guess, about 80 to 100 girls in one room on the concrete floor. That's where we slept. It was in March. The clothes, jacket, small jacket, whatever we had on our back, that's what we lived in for 4 days, 4 nights in a prison on a cold concrete floor.
And Alice, you said you remember how your parents felt when they couldn't vote.
Yeah, the reason we were there, we watched our parents be humiliated when they tried to vote. They would go out, try to vote. They couldn't count the jelly beans in the jar. They couldn't vote. They couldn't name every county in Alabama. They couldn't vote. Anything every time they went to vote. So they were humiliated, especially my father. We were fighting for them. We couldn't vote. And when John Lewis came to our town seeking students to work with SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, I took the flyer and we decided that we were going to go and do this for our parents.
So now let's talk about Bloody Sunday, when you actually marched across Edmund Pettus Bridge. What was that like? You all were hovered together. What did Dr. Martin Luther King say to you all? Because you had no idea.
I mean, everything was nonviolent for us. There was never any violence on our part. It was nonviolent. And to walk across that bridge to see all of these men on horses with whip, the cow prods, and it was the drugstore owner, the grocery store owner, anybody, in the city that did not look like us was recruited to get on these horses with the whips, the cow prod, and then now the tear gas. And when we walked across that bridge and the tear gas, it was horrific.
John Lewis led the march. We were closer up front, and Denise being my younger sister, we were supposed to kind of keep up with each other, but at that point we became separated. I ran myself down to the water and laid down until I could see and, come to again. And yeah, all of these men that were there, they were all deputized by the law, but they were not really law enforcement. They were deputized to do this job that they did on us. So when I came to, I had no idea where Denise was at that time. And all I could do was cry. I cried and I got very, very angry. I don't remember ever getting that angry before. But what I said in my anger, and I said it, I spoke it, that I will fight more. And that's why we were there for the second and the third march. But the whole thing started because of the first death. Jimmy Lee from one of the outskirts of the city that was in, he got killed in one of the protests.
Do you all remember going to the bridge and then kneeling and praying?
That's when Martin Luther King, the day that the second march, and we were prompt that we were only going to pray and turn around. So it was so amazing to me because I had never seen that many people in my life, my little young life, that came on that march. And it was just so invigorating just to be there among them. And when we kneeled to pray and they led the prayer, that was really, really something good.
And after that, we turned around, went back to the church.
And when they got the permission from Washington, from the state of Alabama to march, that's when the complete march started and finished.
There were no school counselors. We didn't have counselors, psychiatrists to go to for us. So we buried it. I just started talking about this, I guess, 4 or 5 years ago. I had a friend that said, "Why did you tell me? I never knew that about you." Because I could not talk about it. So I understand the trauma that kids can have, and don't talk about how much it can eat you up inside. So that's what it did. But I said, I'm not going to let it stop me from still wanting to continue to do the work.
It was the 50th year anniversary of what they call a celebration, and I made it clear for them not to put that in the article because I wasn't celebrating, I was remembering. And that was the first time I talked about it. That was the first time, and I had never crossed that bridge in 50 years, walk across that bridge. And I did that on a reenactment that we did a few years ago. That was the very first time I walked across that bridge in the 50 years that we had done that.
Be heard. What did it take for you to be here today?
So it doesn't take very much for me. I'm coming on my own free will to tell you this. I want to tell you. It doesn't take much for me to tell you now.
Yeah, it was very, very easy to come now, to start now, because of what's happening now, because we're going backwards.
I'm able to tell the story thinking, believing, and trusting that it will help.
What happened to us back then is happening to us again today. They can't tell you, you can't vote, like they told my mother and father. They can't tell you that.
There are going to be so many sophisticated ways out there that are going to try to keep you from voting. And keep up with what's going on in your state, in your city, and become a part. You're not too young to start preparing yourself to lead this country. You can be whatever you want to be. You can be the city council, the mayor, the judges. You can be the president of the United States. We have done what we have done. Prepare yourself to be a part of what happened in your city, your state, in the United States. Be a part. You can have your other careers, but still be a part of what you are going to have to live with in this country and keep your democracy.
And I want you all to know in this room, in 2019, a report found states had removed 7 million voters from their rolls between 2016 and 2018, and 25 states have introduced measures that will make it more difficult for people to vote.
I think it will help to learn the story, to let you know what we went through in order for you to get to where you are today. Let's talk politics tonight. Let's talk voter registration. Let's talk why you should vote for this person. Let's talk why you should not vote for this person. Let's start having those kind of conversations. I ran for city council. I've been an elected official for 15 years now. I'm on the ballot in November. Every time you see that sign out there that says, vote here, that's where I want you to be. Vote there and get your little sticker that says, I voted.
Deep and sincere thanks to our 2 foot soldiers, Ms. Holt and Ms. Moore. Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson is here. And I'm going to end one final special moment this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here today. And we're really in the company of 2 national heroes for whom our country owes a great debt. But I started my career in Montgomery, Alabama, investigating hate groups and hate crimes throughout the country. I went to Selma many times. I go back every year. Every March, there is a reenactment of the march that led to the Voting Rights Act, which was the single greatest piece of federal legislation our country has ever had because it protects everyone's power. Would we have been at the foot of that bridge in March of 1965? Would we have stood up to ensure everyone's power was protected, even looking into a sea of tear gas and billy clubs and officers, police officers? One of the things that's always moved me about doing that walk is how you don't really see what's waiting for you on the other side until you're far too ahead to turn back. You're 3/4 over that bridge from Selma before you can actually see what in 1965 was a sea of troopers waiting for folks on the other side. At that point, it's too late to turn back. You're in it and you're moving forward. And the fact that these heroes and so many others kept marching forward is the reason we have a Voting Rights Act today, which has protected the right to vote for citizens for decades since, and has been weakened, frankly, significantly by the U.S. Supreme Court in recent years in a devastating way. We have not yet fulfilled that dream of a democracy where one person, one vote is a reality for every citizen. And it's on you all here today who have now heard this story to tell this story and to ask yourselves, where is the Edmund Pettus Bridge today? Where is the foot of that bridge today? Where is that bridge today, and what choices are you making today to stand there, to push for a world that is inclusive and truly values every voice and every life? That is our charge. If we do that, then the challenges they endured and so many others will have not been in vain, but in truly we will be building on their success to make our democracy fully inclusive and live up to those ideals of its founders. And the President of the United States has recognized through the Congressional Medal of Honor both of these women and their sacrifices and the sacrifices of so many. But I've learned, Ms. Holt, that you weren't there to receive your medal. So I have with me today a replica of that medal, and I'm honored to present it to you. Thank you both for telling your stories. We will keep telling them too, and I hope all of us leave here today seeking to answer that question for all of us of what we're going to do to continue this fight. Registering and voting is part of that, but fighting for a democracy for everyone is all of our life's work in reverence to those who've made it their life's work in the past. So thank you. And onward we go to a fuller and more inclusive democracy that we can all fight for. Thank you.
And I'm telling you today, you can vote. You must vote. You should vote.